you need when it's a good 120 degrees outside, a urine-soaked wet blanket. Good thing Bontemps is there.
So Bontemps is covering Team USA for this week. One of the busiest times of the calendar year, to be honest with you, when all this stuff has happened involving all these players' teams. They all get dumped out into the interview room all basically at one time. And, this is the high, I'm comparing it to we could spend half hour comparing it to 1992. It's really not relevant because right now on an international scale, these guys are as bigger newsmakers than in 1992, considering the media landscape. So, Bontemps, you've been busy. You spoke to Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid, and they have an interesting situation. They're teammates here on Team USA. They're both coming off of injuries, but they are on the sort of quote unquote winning and losing side of Paul George. Kawhi just lost him with the Clippers. Embiid just gained him with the 76ers. And I thought maybe you could take us through the emotions for the two of them when you guys talked about it.
Yeah, I did a sit down with Embiid. That's partially going to run this morning, and we'll have a big story up about what he had to say. And the biggest takeaway from him was sort of what we have talked about over the course of the last year, which is the Sixers were doing this high wire plan of waiting and getting expiring contracts and getting draft picks and not necessarily immediately improving the team as much as possible last season to try to land a big fish this summer when there was ultimately only one real big fish to land in Paul George. And Embiid told me that his patience was tested during that process. He said I'd be lying if I said I wasn't tested from a patience standpoint, and that sometimes you have plans and they work and sometimes they don't. And in this case, he was very happy, obviously, with the way that it played out and with how it came together with getting Paul George with him and Tyrese Maxey, a fit that he said was a fantastic fit, obviously for all the reasons we have talked about on the court. And then there was Kawhi Leonard, who spoke to a group of reporters this afternoon and was asked about Paul George and said didn't want to talk about Paul George. He was trying to focus on Team USA. Did talk a lot about his knee, said he's ready to go, fully able to participate in practice, and then circled back later after leaving to clarify that he didn't have any issue with Paul George or his decision to leave, but that he was trying to focus on Team USA, which was what, in theory, the interviews are supposed to be about. And I will say, Kawhi Leonard is about the most literal player I've ever interviewed in any respect. So I do take him at his word that the interviews were supposed to be about Team USA. He was answering questions about Team USA, and his knee is part of Team USA because he was talking about whether he could actually participate with Team USA. So we will see. He's going to talk again on Tuesday. We will see if he has more to say about it in that setting. But certainly the Clippers brass is all here watching practice. Ty Lue is coaching the team. Kawhi is playing. And Paul George is still hovering over them, even though he's decided to leave.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's pretty clear he ain't thrilled about it. That's obvious. I think the question is, how upset is he about it? And I'm not sure he's going to emote in that way. I'm not sure he's going to relate exactly how he feels about it. So I think you asked to get it on the record. I just don't think it's going to be there. Embiid, did he talk at all about where he thinks the Sixers fit in the East now with obviously the big summer they've had?
Well, I asked him, where do you guys sit in the East? And in very typical fashion, he said, I think we're about the 8th best team in the East. And I said, do you want to give me a list? And then he proceeded to give me a list of basically every team to the point where I said, would you like to include the Hawks and Nets also in front of you? And then I said, look, in all seriousness, where do you guys think you sit in the East? And he gave the answer he's given to me repeatedly, but I think he believes, which is that if I'm healthy and ready to go in the playoffs, I think we could beat anybody. But it all comes down to health, which, as we know, especially with the Sixers team, with Paul George and with Joel Embiid, it does all come down to health. But I think he sort of told on himself when he talked about how perfect the fit is with Maxey and PG, the fact he's got 2 elite shooters around him, the fact they brought back Kelly Oubre, they got Caleb Martin, they got Eric Gordon, they got Andre Drummond, who's a very good, one of the better backup centers in the league, guy who could spell him when he's not out there. And he also talked about the fact that he thinks that with the group they've got now, he doesn't have to have quite the same load to carry every night, particularly offensively. Said he didn't mind if there's nights when he has 10 or 15 points because they've got Maxey, they've got Paul George. Those guys can fill it up on any given night.
So the guy was averaging 35 last year.
So he's averaging more points than minutes played, right? So like he doesn't think he has to play to quite that same degree. And he actually thinks it might be able to help him stay healthier because he can, he doesn't have to exert quite as much during the season, where he obviously this year, it was basically he, Maxey, and then not much else. So from a scoring standpoint, adding Paul George, a 25-point a game scorer like that, it's a much different deal. So yeah, he's clearly excited to be part of Team USA, and it's feeling good physically. And this is obviously, Brian has been around this a bunch. Everybody's always very excited to be part of this thing and very excited to talk and like do all the things that come with being part of it, because they're just all excited to be here. And I think that's really been especially amplified with this group because it is such a star-studded group. At one point, Bam Adebayo was asked about Team USA trying to like reestablish itself as the best team on the planet, sort of show the gap between everybody else. And he said, have you looked at who's playing on the court?
It is an awesome team, man.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not trying to disrespect anybody else, but this is an incredible group of players, and we want to go out there and beat everybody by 40.
Well, something interesting actually happened on Sunday. They had a scrimmage between the senior team and the select team, which it's not the most talented select team in history, but the senior team won. And I'm going to tell you that at least 2 or 3 times that I've covered training camp, luckily it's you this time, Bon Thompson, not me, the select team won the first scrimmage. In fact, I actually suspected before Tokyo that Popovich wanted the select team to win.
Well, just as a quick aside about Team USA select team, the most interesting guy I think on that team is Cooper Flagg, the projected #1 pick in next year's draft, going to Duke. By the way, doesn't turn 18 until December. He was born December 2006. LeBron was in the 4th season in the league, the year he went to the NBA Finals, and Kevin Durant was a freshman at Texas. And he's playing against them in a scrimmage, which is a rather remarkable thing. I talked to Cooper for a minute. He admitted he was surprised that he got picked. He's the first college player to be part of this since Doug McDermott and Marcus Smart 11 years ago. It's obviously been a minute. And those guys were like 21. This kid is 17 and didn't look out of place. Like he's got a chance to be an awfully good player.
So on one hand, they're off to a good start. On the other hand, a video clip I saw today had Peyton Pritchard guarding LeBron. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure how that strategy is going to play out.
I mean, listen, it's a ridiculous assemblage of talent on Team USA. And Kevin Durant is got a calf strain. His day-to-day, everybody's saying it's not a big deal. He was certainly walking around doing interviews, looked fine yesterday. And Jason Tatum has missed the first couple of days for just for some excuse reasons. I think he's supposed to be back.
It might have something to do with him signing a $314 million contract, and maybe
he hadn't put the trophy down yet. He's got probably a drink in one hand and the trophy in another.
Listen, if he's got his contract in his pocket, I'm going to congratulate him on all parties. Do it, do it, man.
He has been taking the trophy around, but I think it was something beyond that too. But he's supposed to be back for practice on Monday, I believe.
Yeah. So a couple of things. Kawhi said in his interview that you were at today that his knee wasn't really right until 2 weeks ago, but now is okay, which I didn't like hearing that. He did look good in the scrimmage today. I think he hit like 4 threes in the part that the media was able to see.
Were you watching the scrimmage from home?
I have people.
Oh,
okay.
Not including you.
Not including me. Clearly.
He was too busy to talk to me. He was way too busy to talk to me.
That's true.
So I mean, obviously looked okay in the scrimmage, but that he wasn't okay really until 2 weeks ago was, I don't know. I guess it's maybe not surprising, but he talked about how it's his journey. It's what he's sort of always going to deal with, and Clipper fans certainly are used to hearing that.
As they're about to pay him $50 million a year for the next 3 years, and he hadn't been able to finish a playoff run healthy over the last few years. It's a tough deal. As far as like him not wanting to talk about Paul George, like I'm not going to read anything into Kawhi,
I
not
agree.
say much to the media. Like when does he ever?
I agree.
But like it's all part of it. Like the whole Clippers thing. And look, Paul George is a guy who other stars want to play with. Embiid's clearly ecstatic about it. So is Kawhi Leonard. That's why the Clippers still owe so much to Oklahoma City for the original deal, because that's the leverage they had. It required Paul George to get Kawhi Leonard. So, Kawhi kind of, I don't want to say created that mess for himself, but, the reason they paid so much for Paul George is because it was contingent on, that was the part of the deal to get Kawhi.
Listen, Kawhi looked out for himself in the winter when he took the 3-year contract. I'm sure he wasn't actively trying to hurt Paul, but he looked out for himself. I mean, there's been varying degrees of reporting and stuff about just how much Paul George knew. But I can tell you the day that it happened, I think it took Paul George and his reps off guard, and certainly the terms. And so Paul had to do what he had to do.
Yeah.
And I think players understand that, as much as they may be upset about it. I don't think there's going to be any personal hard feelings.
Players always appreciate business decisions when it comes to money.
Bontemps, Embiid is eligible to sign a 3-year, $190 million extension after July 18th. He's going to be in the middle of prep for Team USA. I would be stunned if he doesn't ask for it, and I'd be stunned if Philly doesn't give it. But what are your thoughts on where that's headed?
I have not spoken to Joel about that recently.
I
However,
will ask him on or about July 18th when we're in London.
Yeah, no, I've talked to Joel about it in the past, and he thought it was an interesting idea when I brought it up to him. And,
but he did.
Yeah, it's.
Would you like 190 million? Yes, I
could he
would.
sign? Could he sign a 4-year extension?
I thought it was 3, but
I don't know. Either way, it's a lot. It's a long extension for a lot of money, and I suspect Joel Embiid is going to be, as I've said for a while. I thought the way this season went, I thought with the way Tyrese Maxey emerged, I thought the questions about Joel's future had pretty much been put to rest, and that he would want to be in Philadelphia long term. I certainly will be stunned if he's not there long term now that Paul George is there. I think
I would say that he wanted to be in Philadelphia long term, as long as Daryl Morey delivered this summer. If Daryl had not delivered this summer, it could have there was potential for complications.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Daryl created a situation where he could take a big swing, and he connected. To his credit, he had a ton of pressure on him, and he delivered the biggest name free agent to change teams since Kawhi left the defending champion Raptors and went to the Clippers. So there's no reason. And look, Daryl obviously, a lot of his job is to make sure the big fella is happy, and he's done it from a personnel standpoint to this point now. And I would say it would make a lot of sense for Daryl to say, Joel, would you like to sign this massive contract? And if Embiid would, then say, here's the piece of paper.
Yeah. The Maxey development, I think, just gave them a lot more wiggle room because they had a lot more outs because they had a second star. Obviously, getting PG, I think, cements it. But certainly, yeah, they had a high wire act they had to deliver on, and it's full credit to them. They got the best guy they could get. Getting Caleb Martin was a big deal. 4-year, $32 million deal. Could have got a lot more money from the Heat before free agency. Elected to go to free agency. Ends up getting a bunch less, but slides into what should be, I think, a starting role in Philly. People on Twitter freaked out when I said he'd slide into their starting power forward spot because he's 6'6" or whatever, but that's the opening on the roster. They're going to be a little small, at least for now. And I suspect they're eventually going to sign KJ Martin, Kenyon's son, to a balloon 1-year deal that sort of will act as a human trade exception to further add to the roster. But they've got, they've done about as well, I think, as they
KJ
reasonably
Martin
could
is
have.
their own free agent. That's why they can.
Yes, and there's some various cap mechanics that can give them a bunch of money. But getting Oubre back, signing Caleb Martin, getting Andre Drummond, getting Eric Gordon as a minimum player.
Yeah,
they did about as good as they could have done so
they've
far.
got like 7 good players, which, that's a heck of a thing to do when you're down to only 3 under contract or whatever. All right, we're going to talk about somebody else who got an extension in the last few days, LeBron James. We'll come back here on the Hoop Collective. Welcome back to the Hoop Collective. All right, so LeBron has spoken the last couple of days. Bontemps, he also sat down with our Dave McMenamin. And LeBron signed a 2-year, $104 million, $103 million contract or earlier in the week. He left like $1 million and change on the table in this year. He signed a 2-year deal. He has a player option for next year. I see a lot of people saying, well, he left $3.5 million on the table. We'll see about that because he can opt out of his contract next year and get that money back, or he could actually take less money. But he was going to leave more on the table. The Lakers couldn't get anything done. And in his interview with McMenamin, Bontemps, at times after the Lakers have had inactivity in transaction cycles, particularly at the trade deadline, LeBron has, been a little salty about it. And considering that he was like, I'll leave this money on the table and here's the guys I want you to get, and they didn't get him, I was going to be anxious to see what he said. And he basically shrugged his shoulders and said, well, you got to have somebody, you can't always make a move just because you want to make a move. And we'll give it the old college try and make it the best we can, which is the reality. But he, kind of let him off the hook, but certainly didn't aim any targets on the Laker front office.
Look, I thought the most interesting thing that LeBron said in his public media session on Saturday was when he got asked about, on a couple different occasions. I followed up with him when he didn't answer it, when Dan Wojcicki asked him and somebody else asked later about his expectations with the roster going forward, assuming they don't make any changes. He essentially said, I'm going to show up to work every day and we're going to do the best we can. It wasn't, we're going to be a top 4 team. It wasn't, I think we can win a title. It wasn't, I don't think we can contend. It was, we're going to do the best we can, essentially, which I think is LeBron very correctly, in my opinion, level setting about as low as he possibly can, the expectations, because frankly, to me, the ceiling for this team is that they're the 6th seed. And it's much more likely they're the 11 or 12 seed than they're the 4 or 5 or maybe even the 6th seed. Because again, as we've talked about a lot, he and AD played 140 some games last year, and they were stuck in the play-in all year. And if either one of those guys misses any more time than that, the way the West is right now, I do not see them finishing better than that, certainly, and could very well be a lot worse.
Well, just look at a couple of teams in front of them, you could argue got worse, Denver and the Clippers, but they didn't get worse in such a way that you think they're going to come rushing back at them.
And the Clippers probably, but Denver,
maybe.
no.
Never know, and the Grizzlies could be right back in the thick of things. Like the West is not going to be weak.
Right. Well, and the 2 teams right behind him in the standings were New Orleans and SAC, and both of them added, they weren't all-stars last year, DeJounte Murray and DeMar DeRozan, but they added all-star level players. I mean,
and the Warriors got better, I think, too.
That's debatable, but I agree with you.
It's interesting.
Well, we're going to talk about the Warriors in a minute, so we'll say that.
But, LeBron, though, he did the Lakers a favor. He took a little bit less. The actual numbers of 101.36 mil, and it's just enough for them to stay out of the second apron and all the ramifications that come along with that. And, LeBron explained, hey, when you're in a relationship, basically, you make compromises. Also, hey, part of the compromise, LeBron doesn't want that future first-round pick frozen. If something comes up, we'll see what it counts.
I enjoyed this analogy on many levels. Dan Wojcicki from the LA Times asked him today, why did you take less money? Why was it important to get the team out of the second apron? He then gives this long answer about how he's been married for a long time, and sometimes you have to make decisions or make things work for everybody. And I'm checking it right now because our guy Bobby Marks is on top of all of these things. By taking this money, the Lakers are about $45,000 below the second apron. They are below the second apron, but it's not like they have flexibility to do a whole lot.
No, but
They just literally,
the future first round pick will not be frozen. So
no,
if there comes a time when he wants to be able to apply pressure to be aggressive in the trade market, they can't say, "Oh, well, we're over the 2nd April. What are we going to do?"
I understand. My point is
Also,
that
look,
like
there's back scratching here. They drafted Bronny. He got his 4-year guaranteed contract. Like LeBron, okay, hey, I appreciate you taking care of my son. You're going to put some.
By the way, Bronny also got a $500,000 advance.
Well, that's nice. I'm sure.
but, yeah, and
It helps to get set up. You know, your first job. You know, you got to buy clothes and furniture.
Is that a raise or a pay cut from his allowance?
well, just to clarify,
a pay cut from his NIL.
There was a team option on the 4th year, and I think there was a partial guarantee on the 3rd year just for bookkeeping on him. But
okay.
But my point,
they drafted him. They're investing
no, for sure,
an effort into developing him. You know,
no question.
Nice contract for the 55th overall pick.
No question. My only point was, like, if you're really trying to do something to make this work, and I'm not saying people need to take discounts. I don't think it would make a significant difference anyway. He could have taken like a $7 million discount, say, and maybe they could have used like the tax MLE to sign somebody else to help the team.
Well, you know what, though, in his defense, and I'm sure the clutch official counter would be, hey, he offered to take like a 20-some-odd million haircut, and you couldn't get a Klay Thompson or a DeMar or a James Harden. All of these guys who, by the way, got significantly more than mid-level money. You couldn't get one of those guys to come.
But Valanciunas didn't.
Well, that one.
Valanciunas is actually an interesting one because, like, he would have been their starting center, and that would have pushed AD to 4, and that was kind of like a coded message, you know, as Valanciunas. Like, I wonder if AD like ratified that. Oh yeah, that sounds really good.
Well, in any event, I just found that entire analogy very amusing, and I would say, for whatever it's worth, LeBron has been in an amazing mood the past couple of days. He seems very happy to be here, part of Team USA, and playing with these guys and hanging out.
This is the championship he can win this year.
There you go.
And it won't be easy. Though if they're favored, you know, and all that stuff, but it won't be easy. And people, like, you know, one of the topics on Get Up and First Take in recent weeks, months is have LeBron, like every day we get this question asked to us by the producers. Have LeBron and Steph won their last championship? And I always answer the same thing. No, they're playing for one this summer.
There you go.
Which is which undercuts it, but that's kind of my point. You know, this is the one they can win. And so that's why they're here. And Steve Kerr made a joke that Steph Curry's golf game is really going to suffer. You know, Steph's an elite summer golfer. He won that chair.
He's an elite golfer, period. He ain't just an elite summer golfer.
That's true. You don't stay in that kind of form if you're not playing year round.
He ain't any Austin Reeves.
Well, in an amusing moment, as he was walking out of the media scrum today, he started getting asked about Reno, the Tahoe celebrity
the
pro-am.
Yeah.
He picked Barty Fish to win, the former tennis player, which is an interesting off the board selection. And somebody said, "What about Austin Reeves?" I think it was Wojcicki tried to say he's made the claim he's the best golfer, and Steph sort of politely scoffed at the notion of that and walked out, which was funny.
Wojcicki's going to be carrying his bag, so that's the one to ask.
That is certainly true. Well,
Austin,
I did enjoy
Austin
that.
Is I played in front of Austin last year in Abu Dhabi. He is with Team USA. He is an excellent player, but Steph is on a different level. Steph like shoots under par in pro events, pro level events. I mean, Steph could
try to play on the Champions Tour for sure.
Okay, welcome back to the Hoop Collective. So kind of like the last big free agent on the board got taken off over the weekend, DeMar DeRozan agreeing to join the Sacramento Kings in a sign and trade. The Bulls finally have waved the white flag and begun a rebuild, which we'll talk about in another podcast. But we certainly have thought they should have been doing that a long time ago, and it functionally happened to them. They didn't land on the rebuild. The rebuild landed on them. But that's neither here nor there. It's for another time. But the Bulls helped and sent DeRozan out there. I'm not sure how good of a fit. I mean, the headline is amazing. They're playing a California Classic Summer League game in the Golden One Center on Saturday night. He shows up with De'Aaron Fox, gets a new announce to the crowd. That was a great moment. You'd rarely get to see that kind of stuff in free agency. I'm not sure about two things here, McMahon. One, I'm not sure how good the fit is, like for the Kings, of all the options they had to go all in on DeRozan. And I'm not sure what the Spurs are doing, basically enabling this trade and taking Harrison Barnes.
Well, I'll get to San Antonio in a second because I actually really like what they did this summer.
All right.
And then look, I think with the Kings, it's just a talent, an addition of talent. And they felt like they needed they needed more juice. They needed a talent boost. And then you kind of figure out the fit later. But the thing about DeRozan is he's a guy he's been a tremendously productive player for a long, long time. There's been no drop off. I mean, this is the guy who is going to be a top 30 scorer pretty early, all time, pretty early next season. I do want to hit on San Antonio, though. I actually like what the Spurs did this summer in the sense of I think they've put in a couple of veterans who are going to aid the development of the young guys in the roster in Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes.
Those are two guys who have good reputations.
Consummate pros. I mean, coach on the floor type of guys are going to be great for the young dudes off the floor, all those kind of things that I think they'll both embrace the mentor aspect of the job. They're also, they're not the guys they used to be, but they're going to fit in and they're going to help the Spurs be competitive next year. And I think that's critical for the development of
how competitive are they going to be?
I think the Spurs could sniff around the play-in mix in the West next year. I think they could.
I said this the other day before they acquired Barnes, and I'll say it again now. I use the word semi-bluff. I think it's a semi-tank because
I definitely think it's a semi-tank. I think this has been an ingenious tank, frankly, because I don't think Chris Paul and Harrison Barnes are doing much at all to change their win-loss total. I don't think this team is going to be very good at all. And I think for a team that is still growing, is still adding future assets, and is still looking at a loaded 2025 draft, getting another top 5 to 7 pick in this draft is the smart thing to do. And by getting Chris Paul and getting Harrison Barnes, you could say to Victor Wembanyama, hey, man, we're getting experienced guys. We're getting guys who know how to win. We're getting guys that can help you. And they're not going to hurt the Spurs, but they're also not making up the gap between 22 wins and,
and like
45
wins. Hold on. You know one way to make up the gap? Bump Vic's minutes up a little bit. When he was on the floor, especially in the second half of last year, they were a competitive team. Okay, don't tell me what their record was.
I mean, the record for a very large stretch of the season, even when Victor was playing awesome, was awful.
Their top 3 most used lineups last year were all plus net rating lineups.
In the last quarter of the season, if they either won or almost won every game. I got you. They are a 34-win team and a 22-win team shell.
I'm not, no.
But let me just say this. What did they do with the 8th pick? They traded it. Like, this is a team that could have gone super young, drafted 4 and 8, played Stephon Castle, ton of minutes rookie year, played whoever you take 8, ton of minutes rookie year with Vassell and Wembanyama, taking your lumps and then going into the draft. So they didn't. They've sort of split it.
Yeah.
Cashing in for the future. And I think
keeping all their asset powder dry.
Right. So they're exactly right. So Barnes has 2 years on his contract. Chris Paul signed 1 year on his contract. And they've come out of the summer with more assets than they went into it with. They trade for 2 firsts from Minnesota, or was it a first and a swap?
First and a swap.
First and a swap from Minnesota, and to get a swap from Sacramento. They come out holding more assets and looking at Victor going, we're better, with a little wink and a smile, with maybe Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul available at the trade deadline.
Well, and Barnes can be a human trade exception next summer.
Or he can be a human trade exception at the trade deadline.
But you know what? The other thing is, if the Spurs do make a leap and they are a competitive team, they're a 40, 42 win team, whatever the case.
Okay, I get.
They still might be a top 5 pick.
Well, they're not going to have a top 5 pick if they have 42 wins.
Sure. they don't just have their own picks.
Yeah,
I mean, okay, they have Atlanta's pick, but Atlanta's not going to be. I think Atlanta's going to be somewhere in that same ballpark too, because they're clearly not blowing their team up. And also, again, it is worth pointing out,
Atlanta traded one of their best players and ended up with the #1 pick this year.
Well, sure, yes, they traded DeJounte Murray. I don't know how much that deal's actually going to make them worse next year. They still have Trae Young. They still have a bunch of other decent players. Also, it does bear repeating. The end of the season, a lot of teams are not trying to win. The Spurs played hard to the end. They also were a legitimate 22-win team. The idea that they're going to go to 42 or 44 wins and as loaded as a conference as the Western Conference is, this is not me saying anything negative about Victor. I think he's incredible. I just
never say anything negative about Victor.
I never do. That's just a huge gap to make up.
Still extremely early in the process. France has played a couple of exhibitions, Team France, and blasted them. Victor has blasted them. They're starting Embiid and Gobert and Victor together, and they're running them in pick and rolls.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's going to be awesome.
Good guy.
Very excited to see how it looks.
Yeah. All right. All the contracts got signed in the last 24 hours. We have some interesting little things that we looked up.
Eastern Side Beats.
Fuck on big J in the
Hey,
spot.
Beast,
I'm
been
boy
that
Calvin in the
bitch.
spot. Big Queens, North fuck. Foreign whips to the big jet. He getting money, it was like how he did that. Running up that bag, niggas mad, big facts. Being in my section, getting big smack. Foreign whips to the big jet. He getting money, it was like how he did that. Running up that bag, niggas mad, big facts. Being in my section, getting big smack. Foreign whips to the big jet. He been crying all week and he still ain't get his bitch back. We get bread and she dig that. His glass slips for the big packs. Been hitting TD 3 weeks, it ain't clipped yet. Show him how to make a big flex. Bust 100, that's a big snack. It ain't money, I ain't with that. Play with my money, hear that click clack. Nigga, get your shit back. I've been in this for a big while. You a small dog, little child. Show him how we get wild. Stack this money up and let it pile. Me and Child in the spot, let it snow. They gon' need a plow. Niggas hate, but they jack style. Fuck impact to the Matic, I been going wild. Shorty wanna eat, nigga had to dig it down. Know I'm from the rock, so I don't play around. Foreign whips to the big jet. He getting money, yo, his life, how he did that. Running up that bag, niggas mad, big facts. Guys being in my section, getting big smack. Foreign whips to the big jet. He getting money, yo, his life, how he did that. Running up that bag, niggas mad, big facts. Guys being in my section, getting big smack.
We gon' fuck up a bag, niggas mad that we flexin'. Diamonds on my neck, so you know we got protection. New wave sound, real niggas get in tune, and we bout to run the views. Yeah, and we only going viral, only throwing high-low. Bad bitches, and they only love to swallow. Me and Puerto Ricans, and we only poppin' bottles. Never fuck with hood bitches, only top models. Yeah, it's that big step of shit, not that broke nigga shit. Niggas talk about money, but they never had shit. You can find me in that black truck, or that new foreign whip. Yeah, it's that big step of shit, not that broke nigga shit. Niggas talk about money, but they never had shit. You can find me in that black truck, or that new foreign whip.
Foreign whips to the big jet. He getting money, yo, his life, how he did that. Running up that bag, niggas mad, big facts. Guys being in my section, getting big smack. Foreign whips to the big jet. He getting money, yo, his life, how he did that. Running up that bag, niggas mad, big facts. Guys being in my section, getting big smack. Dig that.